Welcome back to the channel. In this video, I want to talk about creating dark elements for your drum and bass songs. If you want it to be like noir, dark, techie and new school, a lot of the time you want to choose orchestral libraries to, add some of those real elements in there that make it like a little bit more, similar to maybe dark orchestras or something like that, like a hybrid orchestras from like movie trailers. And this is what I do a lot. So I'm gonna play this demo for you and let me know what you think, guys. I'm gonna be commenting as we go. So you can hear there are some horns, strings obviously, core. And it starts to transition into a build-up right here. A lot of tension there, a lot of suspense. Here it comes. So, alright, this is a really cool demo that I put together just a few days ago, and I'm actually kind of happy about this one. It's not something that I normally do, because normally the way that I make my drum and bass is it's more pop, more mainstream, and a lot of the time the reason behind that is that there are more people who listen to that stuff. I like that stuff more, and also it's a lot easier. This type of drum and bass is more complex, but actually the bass lines are more complex than the whole intro stuff that, for you, probably, for most people actually, it looks the other way around. It looks like, oh, making this orchestra stuff, it's like more complex, it's really difficult. No, it's actually not. If you actually choose the right instruments, it falls together very nicely. So I'm going to give you a few tips on how to add those orchestral elements, okay? So let's talk about libraries that I'm using right here. So this is one of my favorite libraries of all time. It's called Forzo by Heaviosity. So this one offers a large variety of different horns, and those horns, I mean, I'm telling you guys. So the reason why it's so low in volume right now is because I have an automation going there. So one of the most important factors when working with real instruments is that you need them to breathe. So literally, it almost looks like breathing. If you look at the automation, so it's an inhale and an exhale. So while you're inhaling, the loudness of the mix goes up, and then as you exhale, the loudness of the elements, of the orchestral elements, goes down. So I think it's not the right way to do this. I shouldn't isolate so much, but if I play all the orchestra, you can hear that. That's the main, like, super important thing that you need to learn. And by just using this small trick, just drawing a very simple automation like that, it sounds like a real orchestra instantly, because nobody in a real orchestra just blasts the sound at the same loudness all the time. Okay, it's just not what happens. So I drew like a really simple progression here. Let me boost the loudness a little bit for you so you can hear it better. So this is a little bit of like a old school kind of progression. Not something that you hear a lot in drum and bass, but it works. And if you don't want to work with, if you're not creative enough, like melodically, you can always get like a pack of MIDIs and choose from those. So it's not really that difficult, okay? Just make sure that it's in the right scale. As long as that is the case, your melody will be like... NEUROFUNK is not a really melodic thing, so there's no big problem whether it's like... It's first and foremost, it's all minor, all the time minor. So if your scale is F, just go for F minor MIDI, and you will find the right chords. So this one is called Forza, but this is actually not. This is Metropolis Arc, which is my second favorite library for horns. And you know, the problem with Forza and Metropolis Arc is that once you isolate them from one another, they don't really work as well. But when you put them together, the horns really come alive. So the reason why I like this particular horn here is because it goes really low and it gets this crunchy, like real mature sound. You might have noticed that I actually removed a lot of low end from here, and that is purposefully so, because I don't want, well, those are real recordings of real sounds. We're making electronic music, so we have to consider the fact that if we keep the low end from the natural brasses and horns, it will evolve a little bit unpredictably, just as it does with a real orchestra sound. And we need precision as much as we want, as it is important. We want as much precision as possible. So I'd rather add like a sawtooth synth underneath, which plays the low register. And here is just for timbre, you know. So this brass, or Brom horn, you should call it, why I like it is it sounds super duper clean if you boost a little bit of high end. A lot of people would use OTT here. I don't want to do that because I hate the phase problems. So instead, I'm going like this. So those two libraries, when you combine them, they work so well. And actually, Metropolis Arc has so much more to offer. They are absolute beasts. Like, they have everything you need for an orchestra. Even though it is a very distinguished, like, it's a very noticeable library. You know it right away when you hear it. It doesn't make it bad. You know, especially since, you know, you're the end consumer that you're going to show this music to, he doesn't give a fuck. So this is not a problem at all. Anyways, so next thing I want to show you is this other library here. And it's not really a library that is so important. This one is called Spitfire Symphonic Strings. It's a really cool one, but honestly, it's not about this particular library. So what I was looking for is extra drama, like dramatic. It's English is weird sometimes. So I was looking for some drama here, and I wanted to add the strings with tremolo. And this is just something that I found. They are really high quality, but this is a very heavy library. So if you want to use it only for this specific reason, there are way cheaper alternatives. You can go and get like a all-in-one orchestral essentials by Project Sam Cinematic Sampling. Such an underestimated library. Usually, like, if you watch some reviews online, you will see people talking about, you know, all-in-one libraries are not offering as much quality. Well, maybe not as many articulations sometimes, but sound quality-wise, this one is great. And unfortunately, I'm not using this one in this track, but I'm just telling you guys, really, like, if you want to get started with orchestra, go and look up Project Sam Cinematic Sampling Orchestral Essentials, and actually go to YouTube and watch a couple of reviews. It's way better than, you know, than people advertise it. Just listen to it. Don't listen to what people say. Just listen to it. As they play, as they show you the instrument, it's absolutely mind-blowing. So yeah, so I'm using these tremolo strings, but also they have the same automation. So they're inhaling and exhaling during the song, and those are the three components. So now let's hear them all together one more time, and I'm gonna talk about components around them. But actually, before we do that, let me quickly go through what I'm using here on different elements mixer track. So a lot of the times horns are really muddy in the low mid. Especially Forzo. Forzo is really dirty, and it would be actually better if I used Sooth here, but I decided to use an equalizer because I knew exactly what the problem was. But you can use Sooth as well. It may be even more suitable for fixing such problems, but this sounds pretty nice and clean. But if you remove that equalizer, it becomes a little bit dirty. It's like a little bit of tubey, and with orchestral music, you want to make sure that you don't have too much going on in your low mid section in the pre-drop, because whenever the track drops, all your attention is somewhere between, like, it's not actually between, but it's split between two parts of spectrum. It's the low end and the high end. So there is a lot of emptiness in the mid. But the problem is that your drops sounds really dull if you add too much information in your low mid, in your breakdown. So here's the difference between making like an orchestra and an orchestra for a drum and bass song. If you make an orchestra for a drum and bass song, make sure that they sound kind of similar, the drop and whatever, the intro, the breakdown, everything, right? So the sound has to be more or less the same. Consider this, it's pretty much like you have 5 songs and you want to put them on the same CD, but all of those songs are made by different authors. So as a mastering engineer, you're going to try and make sure they are evenly leveled and have more or less the same spectrum, analyzing, like spectrum wise have similar frequencies, right? So frequency response is important, but this is exactly the same thing within a single track. So if your orchestra is out of place, I mean, you need to make sure that its frequencies are kind of matching to the spectrum of the drop. So this is why I'm removing all that mud. Also, I'm removing all the, like I just showed you this Metropolis arc, this horn specifically. Why is it not okay? So here I'm isolating, I'm removing both sub, bass, and the low mid as well, right here. So this is really clean as well. And the strings, I mean, pretty much the same. As you can see, I'm removing low mids and mids, very important for orchestra songs. So that's something to take care of. Yeah, and I replace all of those low end elements with an actual synthesized bass, because it's more in the realm of electronic music. So it sounds a little bit closer to what we're expecting. Also, it's a little bit more monosignaled than an orchestra brass would be on a low end, because it would have all that like dirty reverb all over the place. It's, you know, it's equalizing. It takes equalizing. It takes a lot of stuff. You know, it's much easier to just cut it out and add like a layer of a sawtooth underneath. And here's the result. Let me remove all the other elements for now, the orchestra, sorry, the core, and let me just play those elements together. Let's see. So you might be wondering, like, what is the magic? What am I doing to make them sound so realistic? And the truth is nothing much. The libraries, like, here's the trick. I was always super duper scared of learning how to make orchestra, and actually even like I delayed learning about it for so many years because I was scared that it was like the most difficult thing in the world. But in reality, they sound so amazing out of libraries right away. All those elements, they're recorded amazing instruments. So you don't have to be scared. Once you start layering them one on top of another, everything will fall into place. And some of those are absolutely amazing. Like this core right here that I'm using that I didn't show you yet. Let me show you that one. So this core. This core is like, it's the best core that I've found. It's called Genesis, children's core. It can be played as legato, it can be played as staccato, it can be played as a pad. Here I'm using do 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 do. And you can play different words here, vowels, like anything. You can adjust it the way that you want. You can choose different words, and it's honestly, it's magic. This plugin is so good. So also, like, if you look at what I've changed here, nothing. Just that thing that I was talking about earlier. Make sure that you leave enough space in the low mid and in the mid, because orchestra is very mid heavy, and once the track drops, it starts the drop starts feeling weak, even though it's not. It's just that the orchestra part is overloaded, okay? Everything is about the context. So you can hear so much mid information. Great otherwise, not good for drum and bass purpose. And then another thing that I used was like a random vocal pad sample in the background, because I don't want it to sound 200% orchestral. I want to keep some like hybrid orchestra elements. If you don't know the term, hybrid orchestra is like a modern orchestra music for for movie trailers. How it, well, it kind of is obvious how it's different from classical orchestra. The difference is that it has all the modern, cool, super loud, super heavy EDM sounds. You can just put it like that. So the mixing is also more EDM-ish. So for that reason, I like to use some like synthesized elements underneath my orchestra. It also makes the orchestra come alive. This is actually the secret behind making a hybrid orchestra. So for example, you want to make like a powerful Brahm horn, which goes like super low. How are you going to achieve that sound? Distortions, blah, blah, blah. Nah, it's not going to sound as good. You can make a sawtooth layer underneath doing exactly the same thing and add distortion to that one. Then make it a little bit quieter in the mix so that it still sounds like it's your horn, but it's actually double layered. So that's one of those things that I do a lot. This is why I chose this. You can hear this one. Still sounds like a horn, right? If you listen to the song. But it's actually not. And it makes the sound more leveled, more sustained, and more EDM-ish, so to speak. So yeah, those are the libraries that I advise you guys, and those are amazing, and you can see that it's not so difficult. It's from this point onward, it's about your creativity, what you want to do with your song. So you cannot blame it on, you know, your lack of knowledge about synthesis, your lack of understanding of the sound. I've just given you like a super easy blueprint. Here are the libraries. You can download them, put them together. Here's how you equalize the elements so that they didn't sound out of place, and you can play around, create melodies. What's your excuse now? Just go and do that. This is also, funnily enough, this is what is so popular nowadays. So if you look at some UKF tracks, for example, Nick Ross, I think that's his right name, the guy from Noisier, he goes by Sleepnet. He does a lot of stuff similar to this. A lot of producers nowadays do this dark orchestra stuff. Maybe not to an extent that I take it to, because I actually am an orchestra producer and I like it to sound a little bit more realistic than, you know, Sleepnet, for example, because he uses really cheap synthetic core, maybe even synthesized core, but I like real stuff, okay? So yeah, this is the trick. And next thing I did here, I chose a couple of pad elements from Splice, which is one of my favorite things to do, because I let those elements, you know, take me on a journey. Instead of focusing on keeping everything under my control, I get a sample or two and I start building like on top of them. So eventually, like, all these orchestras came together, but everything began from this simple dark pad sound that I downloaded. It kind of inspired me to go and like dig deeper into, like, go further into the rabbit hole. Then I downloaded this other one. And they just came together. They are so nice together. It sounds so much like Noisy. It's kind of dystopian, maybe even a little bit depressive. I really like it. And I decided to play with some effects like this. And by that moment, I think before I started even selecting those orchestra samples, I already had a drop like this, I guess. Just a simple idea. And like, I didn't have an arrangement. I didn't have, so to say, like a formed idea of what I wanted the song to be. So once I got those samples, those pads, it started to come alive. And then I opened a core. This is actually a rendered core, and added like a chorus sample on top of it. It kind of underlines the importance of the dark atmosphere. So this is not a drop, this is more like a drop end, but for whatever reason this is where I started, so it's fine. And here we go into the breakdown. And then we got like this other splice. I think I wrote like cinematic drum samples in the search bar and downloaded this one. No idea really. It's like you guys are grown-ups, you know how to search for things, okay? If you don't, you will learn eventually how to use the right keywords. So here's where the orchestra part finally starts. I think at this point I was lost for a couple of days. I was like, what do I want to do next? And honestly, since I'm pretty, familiar with making hybrid orchestra, I was like, let's just do it what I know how to do. And I decided to make an orchestra transition right here. And then it slowly builds up into this drop right here. So one more thing that I want to talk about here is that in the Forza Heaviosity, there are so many articulations that I was thinking, okay, so some of them are like cluster samples, some of them are like horn stoppers, and I was like, okay, so is there maybe a chance that using some orchestral impacts would, make the song a little bit even more dark orchestresque. I don't know if there's a word like that. So I went and looked for a few cool samples. This is a mid-synth, very simple one I made with Serum. So let me dig through some of my samples right here, and I think we'll find it. Not here, but yep, this. This is a library that I advise you guys to use. It's called Symphonic Destruction by Heaviosity. Honestly, Heaviosity is so good for darker orchestras, and it offers so much. It's such a huge variety of cool impacts and different elements. Also, guys, please pay attention one more time. The bass and low mids, I don't keep too much of that. This is kind of not a really loud thing that it is present in the track, but you can't tell. But it is important. So, for example, here you can find this little horn cluster sound, but you don't notice it individually. But it is important because it kind of completes the bar. It's like a small micro transition, and this is how I do it. So hopefully you enjoyed the content, guys, and I'll see you around.